Recording, I think we're on. Welcome everybody. I'm Matt Grima, and with me today, none other than one of the industry's all-time greats in Brendan Allen. Brendan, g'day, mate.
I did start with that. How are you, Matt?
Yeah, very well, very well. I just thought we'd give a little introduction as to what we're about and what we're doing. But essentially, mate, we're just going to have a bit of a fireside chat about a little bit about real estate, about what you're up to at the moment, and you've returned home in recent times, and we can go through what the rural property market's doing, touch on the metropolitan Melbourne market, and have a bit of fun along the way. What do you say?
Sounds pretty good, mate. I'm pretty honoured to be on your show as a guest. It's very good of you. So no, it sounds good, mate. And I think hopefully people that have nothing better to do than to tune in and have a look at this will get a bit of an insight into, from a real estate point of view anyway, what's happening down in the big cities. And obviously you're down there in Albert Park, one of the nicest suburbs in Melbourne, and I'm up here in regional Victoria in Euroa. The landscapes are a little bit different at the moment, so I think hopefully people find it interesting.
Well done. And mate, you've lived the best of both worlds. So obviously you grew up in country Victoria, and then you plied your trade for about a decade, I reckon, down in metropolitan Melbourne, and you worked your way up to work with arguably, we're not being silly about it, one of the best teams in the country, and you've decided after doing that for a number of years that the poor home was strong for you and your family, and you've decided to return home. But I thought we might touch on your progression as an agent through the ranks and how you ended up being in Team Ciminello with Marcus, and then moving back home.
Yeah, Matty, I finished school quite a while ago now, and you're about right. About 10 years I spent working in residential real estate sales down in Melbourne. Started in St Kilda, did sort of 2 or 3 years in St Kilda for Ray White, and then moved across to Marshall White after about 3 years, and spent the last sort of 7 or so working for Marshall White, which is a great experience. And you're still there, so that says a lot about the place. It's a great place to work, and was fortunate enough to work with a really good team led by Marcus Ciminello and Nicole French, and I learned a lot and had a great experience, and had the great pleasure of working on selling and working with good people and selling some really, really nice property, and learned a lot of valuable skills and lessons that hopefully will hold me in good stead, mate, in the next part of the journey, which is back up here in country Victoria for elders. But you, mate, I was out of school straight into it. You had a slightly different path. You studied for a while, mate, and a bit of a venture into journalism before you made the move across. Tell us a bit about that.
I did. I was the classic kid out of school that didn't really know what he wanted to do. I knew that Mum and Dad used to always get the paper delivered at our house, and I'd always read it back to front. I'd always go to the sports section first, and I copped a lot of flack for doing that from Mum and Dad. They'd always quiz me on what was on the front page of the paper, and I couldn't give them a straight answer. So I quickly realised that perhaps something in sports journalism might have been my calling or what I wanted to do, and decided to pursue that at university. And as you probably know, mate, coming out of university to get any job as a journalist is bloody hard. And I remember being on a golf course one day post-uni without any work, and I got a call from the chief of staff at Fairfax Media, which was in Airport West at the time, and she said to me that there was a commercial writing opportunity available to write primarily about real estate, and had I had any experience writing about real estate, and I hadn't, but I bluffed my way in and said I absolutely had, and I was passionate about it, and that was good enough to get me a seat at the table at Fairfax. So did that for a couple of years, and ended up writing the cover story for the Domain Lift Out in the local Western Suburbs publication. And week in, week out, I'd go out and meet an estate agent at a new property to write the cover story for that week.
What an honour.
Domain
meeting agents every day. Yeah, that would have been good fun.
Meeting
lovely
agents
people.
And seeing some funny property as well. And but look, it was a great experience, and I met a lot of personalities throughout the course of it, and then I started to
I bet.
Real personalities, and I decided to maybe give journalism the boot and move into sales. And did that in the West for four and a bit years. And then one of our mutual friends, who's
I wouldn't call him a friend. I wouldn't call him a friend. I'd say a close associate. Would be probably the best we'd give him.
That's Luke Saville, one of the greats. Him and I were in good contact for a number of years, and then he left. We worked together in the West. He left. He joined Marshall White, and then he was kind enough to put a good word in for me to get an opportunity with the company. I've just ticked over 5 years there. So, not the most conventional way in, but I don't think, based on our experience, there isn't a conventional way in, is there?
No, there isn't. It's an interesting industry in that regard, because a lot of people come into it from all sorts of walks of life, and it's a little bit of a, people say, well, you sort of fall into the industry, and you look. Fortunately, for a long time, you can. It's the point of entry, or the resistance to entry is pretty minimal, in the fact that you can do an agent's representative course pretty quickly, as we know, and get your license, get your ticket. But as we both know as well, getting qualified and actually getting a job where you can earn an income is another thing altogether, which is a journey that, you're doing your apprenticeship effectively for the first few years, which you and I know about, and a lot of other agents watching this will know too. So, very interesting, mate. Absolutely.
The fans want to know, you're working, and we're not sugarcoating this, you're selling some of Melbourne's best pieces of real estate in some pretty highly sought after suburbs, the Turaks and the South Yarras of the world, to name a few. You're working with, as we said, arguably the best agent in the country at the moment, which is Marcus Chiminello and his team. You're an important cog in that wheel as well. And I know you don't like to build yourself up, but you really were. And you decided to give that all up, if you like, which is an opportunity that many wouldn't, to return to your roots, return home, and take your family back to country Victoria. Maybe tell people that are listening, all three of them, what the...
Three? Is it mum and dad, my mum and dad, and your mum and dad?
Yeah, exactly.
One of our dads probably won't watch.
In all seriousness, tell people, or maybe give an explanations or some reasons as why that was the right thing for you and your family to do. Yeah,
it's interesting, Matt. I think as you go through your career as an agent, and probably in most careers, you sort of get to points where you think, I've reached a certain level and I want to, push myself a bit further and develop further. And I was probably at that point down in Melbourne and at Marshall White. And I was looking, and I actually spoke to Marcus and Nicole about, what that looked like for me at Marshall White with them. And so we workshopped that a little bit, but that was earlier this year. And obviously, a couple of things happened. Sophie, my wife, and I had our first child, little George, big George, 10-pound George, at the end of January.
He's Ruckman size already for his age, isn't he?
Yeah, he's going along that trajectory, which is good. He'll be or a big ballet dancer or something like that. So we had George, which is obviously a huge life change, and then COVID sort of started. Obviously, the event commencing over in China, and that was sort of there was a little bit of an inkling that might cause issues here in Australia. But for us, it was more having a child. Soph, my wife's from Euroa as well. And we've always sort of had in the back of our mind that maybe when we had kids, and more particularly when they were towards school age, we'd potentially look at moving back this way. All of our extended family are here. We thought it was a really healthy lifestyle ourselves when we were younger. So we've always had that as a possibility. But COVID came along. Also here at Elders in Euroa, we had I'd been in touch with the guys here over the journey, and the gentleman who was working here previously sort of retired not long before. So there was a spot here. So the stars aligned, I guess. And, I'm sort of a bit of a believer in, I am a believer in having good balance, and, family's important to me, and the lifestyle, the life of my wife, having support of her parents and family, and more importantly for George growing up, knowing his grandparents and knowing his aunts and uncles really, really well, and, having space to run around as a boisterous little boy, which he's looking like he's going to be, is really important. So, look, that probably was the main driver for the decision, but it wasn't lost on me as well. The opportunity I see here and when I say here, I mean, really in regional areas in Victoria and probably other states where having grown up here, I know the value of it, and I know how enjoyable it is for young people in particular, kids and young people. So I have a feeling, and I think that's starting to probably be the case, where people are going to explore regional areas more. So from a real estate business point of view, I can sort of see that it's going to grow here over the next 5 or 10 years. That's my feeling, and I think COVID may push that agenda a little bit, as far as people in the metropolitan areas where this lockdown is a lot more tough. It certainly is. I know yourself, mate. You're you're working from home, and you're in an apartment. You're allowed to go outside for an hour a day, and all of that. So you're in stage 4. We're in stage 3 here. So it's it's not as restrictive. But even under a stage 4 lockdown here, people have, particularly people living on farms, have acres to walk around and get outside and have a bit of space. So yeah, family decision, but from a business point of view, it's really exciting as well, mate. So yeah,
well done.
It'll be good.
To start, when I say to start, obviously you're not starting your real estate career, and it's a transferable skill set that you can apply into whatever market or whatever part of the world that you're doing real estate in to some degree. But to go back to where you came from, if you like, and to start again with COVID hanging over us at the moment, A, has it been difficult? And B, what are some of the things that you've done now, essentially as a small business owner, really, to make sure that your name, your face, your brand is back out into the marketplace? You've clearly got some connections that run a lifetime out there for a lot of friends and family, but there are a lot of people there that may not know you or didn't know what you'd done in Melbourne prior to coming back. So how have you gone about reconnecting with the community?
Yeah, I think, and that was, again, as you know, and I know, Matt, when you move, look, our skill set's transferable, certainly, but a lot of our business relies on the connection. It's really, you're really anchored geographically. Once you set your foundations, the connections you have in the immediate area. So in moving to a completely new area, I know a lot of people in the area, but from growing up, and my family connections as well. But you are sort of starting from scratch and building a network. So that's been interesting. Mainly, mate, literally getting on the phones and calling people and checking in with them and letting them know I'm here and in business, and doing some local marketing as well, in the local papers and that sort of thing. But I think from my point of view, it's going to be, about applying, the good fortune I've had in learning some really good skills and some good habits from working with great people and in a really, competitive environment. I think hopefully the ability to apply those skills locally here will hopefully hold me in good stead. That's the plan, and we've had some, reasonable success pretty quickly, which has been great. So yeah, that's probably, that's the start. But obviously COVID's made it a slightly different environment, whereby, for our market here at the moment under stage 3, we can still do one-on-one inspections at present. We're mid-August, but but look, I know down in Melbourne, you'll touch on in a moment, the restrictions that are in place there sort of don't allow people to come up, and the Melbourne market is starting to form a huge section of the buyer demand here. But I suppose, mate, you can touch on what's happening down in, down obviously you're based in Albert Park, but Melbourne more broadly with the current environment, and what impact that's having on not just all the marketplace I'm interested in as well. So what you think the market's doing, but also, the day-to-day ability, what can you and what can't you do as far as a selling agent goes?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I reckon, BA, during the first lockdown, there were almost 2 markets. There was what I'd call the pre-Easter market, and then the post-Easter market. And the pre-Easter market was the first time that everybody had been hit with information surrounding things like lockdowns, and we're going to be limited in the way we can move. And that word pivot and agile and unprecedented, all of that dialogue is all rung true. And we were learning on the run, and learning about buyer behaviour, about what they want, what they don't want, what they appreciate, what they don't. So everybody was learning, and I reckon initially there was a really sharp decline of anywhere from 5 to 10%, I think, in the first couple of weeks in that pre-Easter lockdown.
Yep.
Then we started to see some light at the end of the tunnel, and I think some consumer confidence or some buyer confidence returned quickly to the market. Interest rates are at an all-time low. We know that. So people's ability to get access to money is still quite strong, and that was starting to see numbers return to open for inspections and auctions, and we saw a real quick spike back into the market post Easter during lockdown 1. And then from that period on until lockdown 2, the market was as strong as it's been for a number of months. And I think that for metropolitan Melbourne, that August, September through to late February market, late last year, early this year, was an incredibly strong one. And COVID was the only thing to put the brakes on it slightly. But we're seeing a real imbalance in the market at the moment. We're seeing low supply, low opportunity. Buyers just aren't spoiled for choice. And then you've got some pent-up demand from the market, people that are cashed up, that have been pre-approved financially, and they're just not getting a lot of opportunity to actually go and buy something. So if 2 or 3 or 4 congregate to the same opportunity, you're typically getting a competitive environment, and you're actually getting some great outcomes. So, and that was happening, of course, until lockdown 2. And now we're in a bit of a holding pattern. There's a colleague of mine, a guy you know really well, Nicholas Hu, who's one of the great agents down in Albert Park, Nick. And Nick likened this time to sort of a December, January period where we're almost resetting or launching for mid to late February again. And that pent-up demand and competition of people that haven't seen real estate opportunity activity will return to the market in really good numbers. And we're really hopeful that the back end of 2020 will be a strong sector of the market. Are you thinking the same thing down your end?
Yeah, I guess our market's slightly different, but on your market, just with regard, like if someone rings you today and says, "Oh, Matt, look, I saw a property got listed in Rouse Street in Port Melbourne. I might be interested. Can I go and see it?" Or what are you able? Like, I'm just interested. What are you able to do? So how far can you send them a video? Are you only allowed to send them virtual content? Can you make an appointment at all, or is it just flat out no inspections at all?
Yeah, I think the reality is, BA, a lot of owners that are on the market at the moment, depending upon what stage their sale is at. So if they have literally just launched to the market, or if they've been on the market for 5 or 6 weeks leading into the lockdown, there might be a slight variation in what they decide to do. But if I receive that phone call, and that phone call is coming in at the moment for a couple of listings that are still live at the moment, what we've done, a lot of agents at Marshall White, I'm sure a lot of agents around Victoria have filmed either their own video on their iPhone, or they've had something professionally done, and you're just trying to send through as much information to a buyer as you possibly can without physically inspecting the property in the short term. And naturally, you build a bit of a hit list to go to, so that when the lockdown does lift, the first people you'll go to are the people on that list that are hopefully still in the market and want to buy. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah, it's interesting here. I know, and we've had a couple of results here pretty quickly, which were both significant listings for the area. So both, large rural properties. One was just under 300 acres, the other was 800 acres, and they were both for the area. The price point was quite high, so the depth of buyer or the amount of buyers looking at those types of properties historically has been pretty slim. So there's only a handful of buyers, but in coming back here, both of those properties we sold in under a week, or under 10 days roughly, which we were thrilled about. But it probably surprised me a little bit as far as how the market was going, and that was really the tip of the iceberg. I think locally here, and I was talking to a competitor of mine this morning, who's a ripping fella. He's had a couple of good listings at the moment, and there's a place just out of town which is is well located property. It's got a lot going for it, but it needs a lot of work, and it's really a lifestyle property. And when you hear lifestyle property around here, the primary market is a metropolitan Melbourne buyer. They tend to be the best buyers of those properties.
Yeah, right.
But it's interesting. He put that place on the market last week with an asking price, fixed private sale asking price, and within a week, multiple offers, offer well in excess of the asking price already, well above what I thought it would. I thought the asking price was pretty good, strong figure itself. But that's in line with almost whether it's a block of land, house in town, a lifestyle property like that, or a broadacre farm. The inquiry we're getting at the moment for regional property here is extraordinary. And Stephen, I was talking to earlier today, who's been selling in this area for a long, long time, said he's never seen anything like it. He said it's just, you run off your feet, and I can certainly reflect that with, what we've been doing in a pretty short space of time. So it's going to be interesting. I think partly it's, the COVID scenario has certainly been the trigger for it. It's made people more aware of actually looking around at what else is out there, what else is outside of Melbourne. A lot of people haven't sort of been much further out than, to the north, Craigieburn, or jumped on a freeway and driven out past the cows and the sheep. So I think a lot of people are, rather than going east or west down the coast. So a lot of people are actually more aware of what's here, and the desire to look at something based on the current environment, which could go on for an indefinite period of time. People actually thinking, well, let's see what's out there, so that if this happens again, we can actually maybe go and live somewhere, semi-permanently or permanently for the long term and work remotely. At the moment, I did a thing on Instagram the other night. The median house price here in Euroa is a tenth, almost a tenth of what it is in some of the better suburbs in Melbourne, which is hugely significant. When you talk about particularly young people, so young professionals or young people working trades or young families, and the affordability factor. As we know, working and living down in Melbourne, the house price, cost of living, etc., is going to be a challenge for people moving forward, irrespective of the economic environment. That's a feedback I was getting consistently working down there, and I'm sure you hear that as well. So yeah. That factor may drive people to look at more regional areas. But yeah, the buyer demand here, or interest and eyeballs on property here at the moment it has surprised me. And I don't think it would have been quite what it is without the unfortunate events of the coronavirus. But there's no doubt that there's going to be a pretty strong period of time for regional property.
How are the country folk handling the restrictive atmosphere that is at the moment? They're pretty free people typically, and masking up and single individual inspections at properties. How are they handling it?
It's a good question, Matt. I think at the moment the attitude of the locals here has been, so the Shire of Strathbogie, where I work, we actually haven't had a case here for a long time, and we're actually right in the middle of Victoria, more or less. And the shires around us, or a lot of them, have had several cases recently in this second wave. So I think even the more liberal operators around our townships here have taken the view of, let's do the right thing to keep this virus away, because as we know, it's not something we want in our region, in our town. So people have been pretty good. I think, I'm from a farming family, and some of the more reckless characters probably are out in the farms, out in the paddocks, and they actually don't need to have a mask on out doing their farm work. So my old man probably falls in that category. So he's been self-isolating for the best part of 50 years. So so that's that probably helps as well. But no, the attitude here, people really want to try and protect the area and keep the virus out. So everyone's been pretty good. I think the disclaimer for us, mate, is that we're both sitting in our own space, so we don't have the mask on during the Zoom call, but we're obviously practicing that, mate, pretty readily.
I haven't minded the mask because it covers 2/3 of my face at the moment, and given the additional growth, I think that might not be a bad thing.
Well, and someone made the joke the other day that us agents might be we're not going to shave until we make another sale. So I think based on that, I think you haven't made a sale for a couple of years, mate.
We might have some long beards. No, I think kind of going to heavily impact what happens at the moment, and if supply levels stay at a similar level to what they're at currently, we know for a fact that we've got high demand out there. Both sounds like your market and my market. And once this lockdown period lifts, I think there's only going to be some positive news on the horizon for the real estate industry. People that are looking to buy and sell. And they always do, don't they? There's always a reason behind why somebody buy a property or sell a piece of real estate. And people want to move, have to move, and naturally, our job is to facilitate that transaction and help people through it.
100%, mate. And I think, as we know, market conditions are seldom that's not very often the reason someone sells or buys. I don't say, I'm selling because the market's good, or I'm buying because the market's good, bad, or whatever. It's life, it's your life scenario, whether it's, if you need more space, you need less space, or whatever the factor may be. So I agree. I think it'll still be transactional. I know in this area, it looks like it's going to be fairly strong, and hopefully for the sake of the economy and the people in our capital cities, that the capital city markets are okay as well. I think the feeling is that if any market's going to take a bit of a hit, it's probably going to be those with the amount of businesses and operation and the more severe lockdowns, particularly in Melbourne. But yeah, look, we're all pretty resilient people, the Australian people. So I think as long as everyone does the right thing in our state, Victoria seems to be the worst, but as long as everyone does the right thing for the foreseeable future and we get it right this time round, we should be in pretty good stead, mate.
Well said. Been a pleasure to speak to you today, and no doubt, mate, you'll be getting some applications from Melbourne estate agents who want to leave the big smoke and get out to rural areas. Join you at Elders down there. Whereabouts are you? You're in the main drag of Euroa, aren't you?
We're in Binney Street, Euroa, which is a beautiful little street. Some good cafes and things that have opened up here over the last few years, Matt. And I'm the only agent in our office, so I'm the only real estate agent here. So it is pretty quiet. I'm probably more productive than I was when I could have lattes with you and talk about how poorly the Bombers did on the weekend. But yeah, it's a nice little place here, mate.
Well done. Mate, appreciate you jumping on and having a chat. Best of luck, and no doubt we'll catch up again soon.
Absolute, Matty. Good on you.
Thanks, mate. Bye.
See you, mate. Bye.